This show is listener supported. You can join us and help our show grow to support more adoptees by going to adopteeson.com/partner. You're listening to Adoptees On, the podcast where adoptees discuss the adoption experience. This is episode 144, Karri. I'm your host, Haley Radke. Today, we welcome Karri of the Invisible Threads blog. Karri and I talk about reunion with biological parents and siblings, what her relationships actually look like right now, and we also talk about some personal struggles with maintaining relationships and how we've both built chosen community into our lives. We wrap up with some recommended resources, and as always, links to everything we'll be talking about today are on the website adopteeson.com. Let's listen in. I'm so pleased to welcome to Adoptees On, Karri. Hi, Karri.
Hi. How are you, Haley?
I'm great. I got to see you 2 times in one day. That's pretty fun.
That is.
We did a Zoom call earlier with the Patreon group, and it was really good. It ended up being, 10 minutes of love fest on me, which I was not expecting. It was very uncomfortable, I'll admit. But we are in unusual times right now. We're trying to make connections in different places. Lots of us are quarantined in various ways. So it was just nice to have that in-person connection earlier in the day. So I'm glad I get
Definitely.
to talk one-on-one with you right now. So I'd love it if you would share your story with us.
All right. Well, I found my birth mother in 1999, and we wrote letters for several years, and she was very sick. And so by the second letter, she had given me my bio father's name, which I thought was pretty amazing. And it turned out that it was actually him, the right name. And we wrote about 8 letters back and forth in total. It took a long time. I would write back immediately, and she would take probably 2 months to write her letter back to me. And that was excruciating because I really wanted more than that. She never did get better. And out of the blue, I got a call from her daughter that she had passed away. And we had been writing letters for only about 2 years. And that's been really difficult to, it's been in the last couple of years, I've started dealing with her passing. She was 59. And so as I approach that age, I think about that, but she was pretty sick. So it took a couple months. I went and visited her daughter and her son, and another son. She has another son that I have never met. And I met a half aunt and some nieces and nephews, and we stayed in touch. We tried to stay in touch for about 5 years, and it didn't really turn out to be too much there. It was just, I don't know what it was. I think they had a lot of trauma, I'm not sure, in their childhood, and it was just too much for them to be in touch with me. I'm not sure. But after her passing, I had contacted my bio father and talked to him. And that was about 2000-ish that I called him, and he didn't really remember me and didn't really know too much of what was going on. And we talked for about a half an hour, and he let on that there was a sister out there somewhere. He didn't know any information. And so I kind of let it go. Over the years, I had looked for her and didn't, before DNA, I didn't really know how to find her. And he and I did not stay in touch. And in June of 2018, I did my DNA, and I matched with somebody pretty high who also seemed pretty young, though. And so I finally talked to her, and it ended up being my half niece. And she put me in touch with my half sister, who is 3 months younger than me. So we were both born in 1962, and we both had the same bio father. Our he was dating her birth mother and my birth mother at the same time and got both of them pregnant.
Okay.
Yes. And she got shipped down to Portland to have her baby, and mine remained in Seattle. And my birth mother was 19 and hers was, I think, 20-ish. And so both on the older side for, having an unwed pregnancy and hiding it and all of that kind of thing. So she grew up in Portland and was adopted from there. And then I was in Seattle and adopted from here. So I met her a couple months after that. And then I traveled down to Texas. She lives in Texas now. And we traveled down to meet her. And then just last June, so it was right after I went down to Texas, I thought, I wonder if he's still alive, because would be 80. And so I wrote him a letter, certified letter. Well, it was the largest snowstorm in Seattle for the last few years, and the letter got lost. So I had to send another one. And that one, he actually ended up getting both of them. And he called me about a month later, and we talked for a little bit. And he says, "Now, what is the age difference between you two?" And so he really had no clue about anything. And I said, "Well, it's 3 months." And I thought he had dropped the phone, actually, because it was just pure silence. He did not know. He just didn't know. And he told me he thought he was kind of a jerk back then. And I thought, I didn't know what to make of it. So about a month later, we met, and we met. My sister came up here, and we met him because he lives only about 40 minutes away from me. And so we met for dinner, met his wife, and his wife took pictures off of the wall in a grocery bag to bring to us and show us family member pictures, which was really sweet. But I think she was more excited about it. I mean, he was pretty excited, but she was really over the moon excited to meet us. So we had dinner, and that was the last that I've talked to him. He emails every once in a while, jokes and things like that, but we don't really talk. And really that's okay, because I got what I wanted. I didn't want to miss the opportunity like I had with my birth mother of not seeing her and not hearing her voice. And I just didn't want to miss that with him. If there was something more, that would be great, but there really doesn't seem like there's too much more there. So we, and incidentally, the same week that I was going to meet him, I had gotten a letter from the place that I was adopted out of, and the foster mother had recently passed away. I had no idea that I was in foster care. She had passed away, and the daughter had found all of her records from when she was fostering children. And she found pictures of me at, I don't know how old, but they're the youngest pictures that I have. And I had no idea that I was in foster care. I had no idea. So my name was, this is kind of sad, but my name was Linda number 2, because there must have been another Linda at the foster care. But she had filed all these pictures, and she had written on them and had all these notes about me. So that all happened that same week, last June. There's quite a lot, being an adoptee, there's always stuff happening all the time. So, but yeah, so that's pretty much my story. I was adopted at 2 weeks, but now that's changed, because during the timeline from the foster mother's pictures and dates on it, it's about 18 days that I was adopted out. So
what was that like, finding out, you were in foster care for that length of time and you had no clue that that happened.
That was really crazy because I had just sent the letter, I had gotten the letter, and I was like, wow, it's from the Children's Home Society of Washington. I mean, I'm 57 years old. What do they want from me? And I had to sign a hold harmless letter before they would even let me have any of the information. And so, yeah, and it was crazy because I had no idea. I don't know what I thought because the Children's Home Society here is like just an office building. So, and I think it was the same way back in the 60s. So to think that they had babies lined up in there was kind of strange to think about.
I think I always just assumed I was in a hospital for, 10 days. I still don't actually know because my records don't say. So, but yeah, where are you going to put all those babies?
Right. And I thought it was interesting to share that because if people hadn't thought, because the Children's Home Society still exists today. And the lady that I was emailing back and forth with, I told her that I really appreciated getting this because this was something I had no idea that even existed. And so for her to say that, I wanted to let her know that I appreciated the letter and reaching out and all the work that they had to do. I mean, there had to have been boxes and boxes because she was a foster mom for, it sounded like 8 or 9 years. And the daughter that found him was, part of the family too. Like she was probably my age, helping out with the babies. So I just think that there's a lot of other avenues. The other thing that I did, I also called the hospital and asked for the records on my birth mother's hospital records. And those were destroyed, but you never know what kind of information is out there.
So you've had some interesting correspondence, it sounds like.
Yes.
Let's go back. And first, I'm really sorry to hear about the passing of your first mom. And after such a short time in your relationship, and you said you had shared 8 letters. I mean, when you were talking, I could barely help myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did you write in your letters?
Right. I know. I wish I could remember what I'd written in those letters. And I almost feel like contacting my half sister to find out what was in those letters or if she's even still has them. But it was about, I think the last I spoke to her was about 2005, maybe 2006. And obviously she doesn't want any contact. And, part of it too is I get really tired of being the one to initiate contact. And that's what gets frustrating right now with my birth father is that I'm tired of the one doing all the work. I coordinated the whole dinner. I coordinated, I found my birth mother. I find my siblings and, it gets hard after a while. It's hard being the one that does all the work.
Well, when you're the initiator, when you were the one left, right? Like, it's like, right. Really? At what point in time are you going to want me? I think that's sort of, for me, that feels like at the root of it. Do you remember anything from the letters from your mother besides getting your dad's name, your bio dad?
Well, the ones from her, I still have all of those. And of course, they're at work, locked in my desk, and I can't go back to work because I'm working from home. But I had asked her about any addictive type of things, if there was any alcoholism, any things like that, because I've always had what I felt was an addictive personality. And she said, oh, no, there's been no alcoholism or anything like that. And her daughter said, yes, there was. She lied to you. Uh-huh. And so that kind of makes a little bit of sense because, in my 20s, there was a lot going on. I was trying to figure out coming out, and I was, dealing with all the adoption stuff, even from an early age, but in my 20s, you're just trying to figure everything out. I was drinking a lot and trying to fit in all the different ways. And so that might have been nice to know. There was a lot of things that would have been nice to know, but it's just not one of the things that we're afforded as adoptees.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I had another guest on the show talk about how in Reunion, she had to come out twice. And I'm curious if you had that same sort of experience. Did you share that with your first mother or with your bio dad?
I did, actually, right off the bat. And as soon as I started writing letters, because I didn't want that to be something that was going to hold back the relationship. Like, I wanted to know right away if that was a deal breaker or not. And I kind of alluded to the fact that I was a lesbian and that I was in relationship. And she said, "Oh, I kind of had a feeling," which is everyone's typical response.
What does that mean?
Exactly. What does that mean? But with everyone after that, I, like my bio father, when I was on the phone with him, I said, "Well, I have a wife and we have kids and and I just kind of zoomed over it just like I usually do. But yeah, you have to come out all the time, over and over again, everyone that I meet. And now I'm to the point where I just put it out there. And if it's a deal breaker, then I want to know right off, because I don't have time for it. Really, I don't want to find out, make a relationship, which is hard anyways as an adoptee, and then find out, oh, I can't deal with that part of your life, which that's probably the most normal part of my life is the fact that I'm gay.
Well, you had an interesting blog post about that. It's one I actually didn't print it off because I didn't know if you would want to talk about it or not. But I'll let people find that and read it on their own. I think it's quite provocative. Anyway, talking about relationships and how, so the relationship kind of didn't go anywhere with your maternal half sister, but
Right.
You have one with your paternal half sister who was also
Yes.
adopted.
Right.
So how is that, having an adoptee for a sister, and you were raised totally separately? I'm assuming she had no idea about you growing up either.
No, she didn't. Neither one of us knew about the other until I think she knew in about her 20s that somehow or another that bio father and her mother had talked or something, and said at that point that my birth mother was pregnant at the same-ish time. And so she knew more about me than I knew about her. But he was all wrong about all the details. Like, he said that she was older than me and that she lived in Washington, the first time I talked to him. And so he was, all the details he was not up on at all. But he never saw either one of us, and there was never no interest in either one. And I think he found out we were pregnant, then, he went off on his merry way.
Find the next girlfriend.
Yeah.
Did he have any other kids?
He does. He has 2 children. And he said that I should be expecting an email from his daughter, but that hasn't happened.
What's it like connecting with your sister who's an adoptee? Because that feels like a pretty special bond.
It is. It's different, though, because I feel like I'm in a different place than her. And though she does say that she has some of the same things, like the trust issues and the abandonment. Her birth mother's still alive, and she doesn't have any relationship with her at all. It is. I think we kind of understand each other a little bit better than most. Like I'll call her up and I'll go, man, I'm sorry it's been so long. And she's like, don't worry about it. We don't do that. Don't worry about it. And it's like, that's comforting in a way. But then I'd also like to have more of a relationship. I don't have any siblings that I really talk to or have a relationship. I have an adopted brother and we're not biologically related. I don't talk to him at all because we don't have anything in common. So I'm not in touch with him. I'm not in touch with any of my siblings. So that's just kind of the way it is. But we're working on it. Prior to, we were trying to have a time to meet up. I was going to go down there. She was going to come up here. And that's hard too, having it's a long distance relationship and it's hard with a time zone to do that. But, I think that we're in each other's lives for the duration and more so than the others. I'll say that.
Thanks for sharing that, because I think people have either these really unrealistic expectations of what reunion is going to look like, right? That honeymoon period, and whether it's a parent or a sibling, and where you're just going to find everything out about each other and you're going to be best friends, but you both have established lives, and adding someone in like a new relationship, it's all very challenging. And especially even as you mentioned your adopted brother, like we have nothing in common. Like I think that happens for a lot of people who are reconnecting with a bio relative in some sort of reunion of some kind. They find they're just so different, and it's really hard to manage a relationship like that, especially if both people are not super invested. And as you said, you're often the one reaching out. It's hard to not feel that reciprocal relationship.
Right. We have stayed in contact more than I thought we would, but then I don't have anything to base that on because my sibling relationships have all fizzled. So my expectation was very high at the beginning. I thought, we're going to be best of friends. We'll be on the phone all the time. But you're right. We have lives. I have a lot going on. She has a lot going on. And there's just no time for a phone call here and there. And what's the best time to call? What's the wrong time to call? It's been challenging, but I also am comforted by the fact that I could call her at any time and she's happy to hear from me, and vice versa. I don't have that with any other siblings. So, and I've kind of created, a sisterhood around me anyway. So, I kind of, it's sad to say, I kind of feel like there's not much more room for more people, more effort to be put into more relationships. But it's harder to make friends too as you get older as well. It's a challenge.
I think there's something special about a relationship, though, where you can literally just pick up the phone and keep on going as if it hadn't been 6 months or a year. I think that's something special.
That's true. Mm-hmm. And I do feel close to her. Like when she came to Seattle, we spent 4 days together and just hung out and went and had coffee and walked around and talked and talked and talked and talked. And that was awesome. It makes me want more of that, but I also know, and that's where the adoptee part comes in, is that it's hard to do that and not expect more. I constantly, I want more, but the expectation and what I know to be true, there's not going to be more. It's going to be 4 days every year, maybe, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think I like hearing your perspective on it, because you're mentioning multiple different relationships and how they're all very different. And I think that's really reality for a lot of us. We're not going to get the perfect happy reunion with every single person. And I think there's so much striving, especially when we talk about healing, and I'm putting that in my air quotes, healing and all of those, like working on ourselves and hope the other person works on themselves. And sometimes it's also okay to just be like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I have this one quote that I like: if it comes, let it; if it goes, let it. And that's how I kind of felt about this. You know, it took her forever to call me. It felt like when we found each other, and I'm like, okay, I just got to step back. She's busy. She's got things. It's the middle of summer. She's got things going on, and when it comes, let it; when it goes, let it.
I have a couple of things underlined from stuff I printed off from The Invisible Threads, which is Karri's blog. So I'm going to ask you about this couple of lines. Okay, so this is a quote from you. What if I really felt like I could unpack my bags? What if I knew I got to stay? Would I be able to fully participate in a relationship if I knew it didn't have an expiration?
Yeah. Wow. I wrote that when I felt I was looking back on when I was growing up. Like, I always thought that somebody was going to knock on the door and take me away. And I guess I never really got the feeling that I was going to get to stay in my house, in my relationship, with my parents. And that's carried on throughout a lot of my relationships. Like, I always was waiting for the other person to leave. Like, I was waiting for it to be over. And I always thought that there was an expiration date, an end time, but I didn't know when that was coming. You know, I always was waiting for that to happen. And so what if I knew I got to stay? You know, I never really knew that I would get to fully participate, fully be in it. It felt like I wasn't sure if I was going to be kept. You know, I knew that I was with my parents and with in their house, but if somebody could give me away once, what was stopping them from giving me away again? And that's carried on through probably every relationship in my life.
Okay, so our last 5 minutes, we were talking about these complexities in relationship, and then looking at this blog post, and you're sharing about how it's easy to feel like someone's going to leave you in relationship. And so feels like a bit of a juxtaposition there, you know, like, is this how I really feel? So am I deciding to give up sooner? But also, you were talking about how you're the pursuer in so many relationships. So I don't know. I'm not putting anything on you. I'm just wondering what you think about that, because I think it is a very common thing for a lot of us, myself included.
It is true. I probably call it quits faster, or sometimes let it go way too long than it should. But yes, I'm like, I don't even want to start it because I think it's going to end. So yeah, so there probably is a certain amount of that in there.
You know what I found interesting observing my own behavior in the last few weeks of being quarantined and feeling lonely. And yet I have so many people sending me very kind messages or texts or like checking in. And my first reaction, Karri, is like, oh my gosh, stop bothering me.
Right.
Which is so...
I am right. I'm right there with you. I could do this for probably years. Be in my house, just watching Netflix and not answering the phone and not reading texts. I agree. I'm loving being home all the time, just walking around the neighborhood once in a while.
Well, and I also shared right at the beginning of our call that I had a very uncomfortable 10 minutes today when people were telling me nice things about me. And it's really like, it was so kind and out of such a like beautiful place. And I cried and all of those things. And yet for me, I'm just like, okay, I just need to like push that away because I don't know if it's really true. And, it's just a weird thing. So anyway, I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus. I'm for sure with you in that those feelings of relationship, give and take and not knowing what to say pause to or say yes to and accept.
Right. I totally get that. I do get that. And when someone would comment on my blog and say how, I mean, I haven't gotten that kind of praise that you got earlier today, but people that have resonated with it. And it feels good to be telling someone, and I'll go right along with that too, is that this podcast was the thing that started 2 years ago for me. It started off everything. If I hadn't have found this podcast, I really don't know where I would be today. So it has been a lifesaver. And that's how I found all the, similarities with me. I knew I wasn't alone because I heard other people talking about things. So if it hadn't been for this, I don't know.
Thank you. Don't say anything else nice to me.
Okay, I won't.
Okay, I'm going to sort of shift topics because another thing you wrote, and it's your word choice here that I found so interesting, and I would love for you to explain it, because we talk so often in adoptee land, and especially, on the healing series, and when we're talking about difficulties in different situations, we talk about being triggered. Okay, so that's the word I'm always hearing. Mm-hmm. But in your post, you say, sometimes it's so hard to be adopted. Things that are said, things that happen are so activating. And I was like, that is a good word. Can you talk more about that?
Well, I realized after talking with a friend of mine who was involved in a workplace shooting that triggering was not the right word for her. And so that's when I started trying to use activating or reactive or something like that. And it makes sense if that is just bringing that back to her all the time about guns. It's like, I don't want to give her any more to think about, to worry about. So I try to stop using that verbiage. So, but activating really does, it almost works better because I am activated by a lot of different things all the time.
Me too. And so the word triggering, I've never thought about it in that context. So thank you for sharing that because, okay, that makes a lot of sense. The other thing about activating is triggering feels very like negative for sure, 100% negative. And activating sort of, I'm picturing, someone pushing a button and a robot turning on, or just like something like awakening in you. And sometimes it's like someone will say something and it's not like I'm like, get really angry or something. It's just like everything gets highlighted in my brain about something we talked about earlier, like looking like someone. And it's not necessarily like a negative thing. It's just like, okay, everything lights up. So I love that word activating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's how it is. I have a lot of incoming all the time. That's another one of my favorites is there's so much incoming all the time going on. And I almost feel like the quarantine that we're in is, and the worrying about the virus, that really has taken precedence. There's not a lot that gets more important than my adoptee issues. And I feel very stuck because of the virus and the quarantine that we're in, not because of the quarantine. I'm loving the quarantine. I don't like the virus, but the incoming about all the things going on, I just feel like there's always so much like it explains why I'm exhausted all the time, because there's so much going on in my head. And that's why I decided to start writing and put the blog. I did the blog mostly for myself. I just started it. I decided to just start it, and slowly I would tell a few people about it. And once I saw that people were really getting something from it, and I felt good about what I was writing, I was okay, we'll tell a few more people about it.
I love that. I want to talk about that. I just want to go back one more time and just say, I think giving people that word, activating, or what was the other thing you said?
Incoming.
I love that language, and we could use it with other people, because if you say, oh my gosh, you just triggered me so much. Like, I feel like that puts someone on the defensive plus, you statements. But if you could say, wow, something you just said really activated something in me, I feel like that's a better start to a conversation about something.
Right.
Anyway, I really got that light bulb moment from one of your posts. So
awesome. That's what I like to hear.
Just one word. How about that? Hey? Okay. Tell me more about that. What really was the push to start? You were just feeling like someone else has got to be feeling these things, and I just want to write it out and connect, or you just needed to get it out of you? What was really just behind starting something and sharing it publicly?
Well, it had always been written journals and things like that. And it was actually, going to the retreats and realizing that writing it made me feel better, and getting it on paper. And once I would get it out, it felt like it was releasing. I was releasing what was in me to go on to something new, though it's not always new. I feel like I'm on one of those wheels that the squirrels are on. That's how sometimes
hamsters.
Yes.
Can I just tell you, our neighbor has a cat wheel.
Oh,
It just looks like what you think. It's a giant hamster wheel for a cat.
Well, and that's what it feels like. It feels like a giant hamster wheel in my head, and I'm going round and round, and getting it on paper has been life-changing to get it out and get it. And I also felt like if I was feeling something, that others likely were too, and that I felt very alone, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, all my life, really felt very alone in how I was feeling. And to help someone else was really my goal. And because I knew that just in talking to people that I was not alone, and other adoptees were feeling much, much the same. And so that's why I started the blog.
Now, tell us about the name, because it's really powerful.
Well, a friend of mine is an artist, and I had asked her to make a birthday present for my sister. And she came up with a card, that handmade card, and she put on there the invisible threads. I don't even remember what the rest of the card said, but it was the invisible threads. And I thought, that is exactly how we're all connected. I'm connected to you through this invisible thread. I'm connected to, all the people on the Zoom call this morning through these invisible threads. We're all connected in some way or another. And my sister and I, Texas to Seattle, were connected. And I thought, that would be a great post or a great title for a blog. So that's how I came up with it, and took it off of that card and used it. So
I really like it, because when I picture it, I picture us and our connections to all our, relatives, our genetic relatives, and how they're there, whether or not they're acknowledged. And I don't know, I feel like there's so many different ways people can think about that and how it impacts them as an adoptee. And yeah, I really love it. I think it's a beautiful name.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to share with us, Karri, before we do recommended resources?
I think we pretty much covered a lot of it. My life in a nutshell.
Perfect. Who knew your life could fit in this neat 50-minute pack? Okay. Well, I so appreciate you sharing your story with us and the ups and downs and like the real of what reunion looks like. And I really do want to encourage people to go and check out Karri's blog, The Invisible Threads. She has some really thought-provoking pieces, and I felt challenged by a few of them personally in a good way. And I don't know, I think you just have a very reflective way of writing about things that come up for you, either past or present, or looking towards the future. And I really appreciate your take on things. And yeah, I think you just write in a really beautiful way. And you share some things about your family as well that I think there'll be a lot of people that relate to that. And again, I mentioned an earlier post. I'll link to both of those things in the show notes so you can find those. And yeah, I think the other thing that I was looking at your Instagram for your blog today, and you share a lot of memes that other people have created, but they're so interesting and also challenging and thoughtful. You share a lot of things from therapists and just things to sort of, I don't know, maybe ground you for the day. What prompts you to share a lot of those things?
Well, sometimes it's just maybe what I need to hear that day. And again, it goes back to if I need to hear that I'm loved for a particular day, then I think somebody else probably needs to hear that too. And
I'm laughing because I literally wrote down about your Instagram. I was like, I wonder if she's sharing these because she needs to hear it.
Right. Right. I'm human too. I'm an adoptee, and I need to have some reassurance that, there's tomorrow. And sometimes I'll read something. I have some saved, and they are a lot of other people's. I haven't created my own, but yeah, I just share them because I feel like somebody probably needs to hear that. And, if I do, they do too. So.
And you have some beautiful photos that go along with your blog. And when you share a blog post, you share that on Instagram too. So I really enjoyed looking at some of those, especially that picture of the shadow hands.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Those are my granddaughters.
Oh, okay. That's very special.
Those are our 3-year-old granddaughters. We took them to the aquarium and they put their hands up on the glass. And I thought, that's the picture.
Okay. Silhouette, not a shadow. Perfect. Okay. Well, I just want to mention another resource that I think might be helpful, especially if you're listening to this when it gets released and you're still in lockdown. Oh my gosh. Every time I say stuff like that, I'm just like, what a time to be alive. I just, it's just, who knew that this would happen? Anyway, I'm sure lots of you have heard of Adoption Network Cleveland. And today, Marnie, who has been a guest on the show a couple times, mentioned to us that Adoption Network Cleveland is having these Monday evening speakers, and they are reposting all of these lovely talks on their YouTube channel. So I'm going to link to that in the show notes, but there's definitely one particular one you should check out, and it's Leslie Johnson's talk. And Leslie's been a guest on our healing series multiple times. I think she's had the most appearances on the healing series. So I think you should really check that out as well. And I'll link to that, as I said, in the show notes. Okay, Karri, what do you want to recommend to us?
Well, I would have to say what started me off on my writing and the blog is being with people and being with other adoptees And the Beyond Adoption You retreats is what showed me what it was like to be in a room full of adoptees. And so when I came home from those retreats, I wanted to create my own community, and because I needed it. It was like a drug for me. So when I got home, I found the Adoptees Connect groups. I do a Marco Polo group with some of the retreat people, and I have a writing group that meets at my house. And it's just, yeah, the community is what my recommended resource would be. And finding that, and now it's such a great time because everything's on Zoom, and you can get on a Zoom Adoptees Connect across the country. You could probably do 3 a day.
It's like meetings. They're the meetings, you can find them everywhere. And I think I love everywhere. I love that you're highlighting the connection there.
Mm-hmm. The connection is what has done it for me. I have people that I can call and bounce things off of and talk to. And like I said, the Marco Polo app has been great for a time zone kind of connection because it's a video text message basically. So I have a group of 5 friends that we bounce things off of all the time. So that's been huge for me because when you're an adoptee, you often feel kind of alone, like what you're feeling is you're the only one. And we're not. There's plenty of people out there that are ready to connect.
Totally. And there's just, I don't know how many times I've said this before, but there's something really special about talking to another adoptee because there's a level of understanding there that you don't have to explain yourself and you can kind of dive in and they get it. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I use Voxer, which is a similar app. It's great for, those time shifted conversations when you're talking to your long distance friends. So that's great. Right. Thank you so much, Karri. I so appreciated chatting with you.
Thank you, Haley.
Why don't you share with us where we can find you and connect with you online?
Well, like you said, I'm on Instagram, The Invisible Threads on Instagram. I have my blog.com, theinvisiblethreads.com, and you can also reach me by email at theinvisiblethreads@gmail.com.
Perfect. I will make sure to share all of those in the show notes. Okay, friend, I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you are finding community that you can connect with online during this time, and that wherever you are following the safety protocols that your area has put into place. I know some places are opening up a little bit more. Some are still totally locked down. Our news that I've sort of been alluding to a little bit here and there is that in the midst of the global pandemic, we bought a house and we're moving. So yeah, it's a whole thing. Who knew that trying to homeschool 2 small children and still record podcasts and pack an entire household without any help because of physical distancing would be hard. I didn't know. Did you know that would be challenging? Yeah, so that's what I've been doing. That's why if you've emailed me, you have not gotten a response. That's why if you have DM'd me, you have not gotten a response. I am just holding it together as best as I can. So I want to let you know that I am still planning on having an episode up in 2 weeks. That is if my internet service provider does a good job of installing high speed at my next house. So if I'm not here in a couple weeks, I will be back. I promise. I even have part of the episode recorded. It's just not totally finished yet. So just so you know, those are the circumstances over at the Radke household. I hope that you are doing well, that you are staying safe and healthy, that you have the supports in place that you need. Like I said earlier, finding community in person is amazing, and online is great when it's, circumstances like this. So I hope that you have connection and support and that you're not moving right now. it seemed like such a good idea, at the time. And now that it's here, it's like, really? Anyway, we're excited about a new house. I'm excited about a new studio to record in. And I'm so grateful for the ongoing support from many people who have been signing up for Patreon, which is just like amazing. I'm so grateful. So if you want to join other Patreon supporters, monthly supporters, adopteeson.com/partner has all the info about what you get and benefits. And you might have to wait a couple weeks on this feed, but on the Patreon feed, there's a new episode every Monday. So go on and check it out if you're like missing adoptee chit chat. If you don't see this episode up Friday morning in your podcast queue, there is tons of episodes over on Patreon. So adopteeson.com/partner has the details for that. Thank you so much to the people who have been signing up to that. I'm so grateful. And we're so close to 150 patrons, like so close. I'm really excited about hitting that milestone. That will be just like so great. Anyway, again, hope you're doing well. Thanks so much for listening, and let's talk again very soon.